talked about the media's response to this, and we've talked about the story, the attempt to make the story Mitt Romney. I'll get to all that, but I want to go to the foundation of what we are fighting against, who our enemy is specifically. We talked about it all week. Andrew C. McCarthy and others have been talking about this. We have just an incredible opportunity here, and you've been hearing Frank Gaffney, president of the Center for Security Policy, to educate us on what is at play with our foreign policy today and our national security. And Frank, before the break, I left you with walking into the White House. And actually, there are two folks there. You have the president and you have Mitt Romney, Governor Romney. And they say, Frank, this thing's gotten out of hand. Where are we today? Specifically, what do we do? Because you've described the threat of this being an opening for the groups to come together and, in essence, make it a regional and potentially global effort war.
I would say we have to go back to first principles. We have to rectify what we've been doing even before President Obama came to office, to be honest with you. And of course, much of what we do in that online curriculum is document how literally on 9/11, I had a providential experience of witnessing leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood come together for the purpose of trying to figure out how to make lemonade out of the lemons of 19 of their co-religionists killing nearly 3,000 of our countrymen. They met, incredibly, in a conference room that I shared at the time with Grover Norquist. It's a fascinating story. It's laid out in considerable detail in part 3 of this course, MuslimBrotherhoodInAmerica.com. But I would say to the president, you need to move away from everything that we've been told and thinking and promoting as American policy, basically from that day to this, specifically that what's going on here, the threats that we're facing, are not simply from violent extremists or even from radical Islamists. We're contending with this totalitarian ideology that not only causes certain radical elements to be radical, it actually commands, they think, from God, that all Muslims engage in jihad. Unfortunately, most of them don't, but enough do. Probably hundreds of millions of them do, to make this a very, very serious problem. Getting that right and getting it clear that it's not a matter of faith, it's a matter of this totalitarian ideological doctrine that animates it, well, then we have tools that enable us to protect our people against it and to counter it where we confront it elsewhere. But if we persist, and I would say respectfully, Mr. President, if we persist in engaging the Muslim Brotherhood, in pretending they're anything other than a centerpiece of the problem of this jihadism and this effort to impose Sharia worldwide, if you continue to meet with them, not just in the person of a guy like Mohammed Morsi from Egypt, but in the person of Mohammed Majid, the president of the Islamic Society of North America, the largest Muslim Brotherhood front organization in the United States, in the person of Huma Abedin, the deputy chief of staff of the State Department, Rashad Hussain, the special envoy of the United States to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, in the person of Mohammed El-Biari and Dalia Mogahed, and on and on. These are people who represent, I believe, the Muslim Brotherhood and its agenda, who you have given opportunities to exercise influence over our policies. And not surprisingly, we're beginning to see the fruits of that very dangerous misdirection of our policy, not just in the sense that we're now bringing it increasingly into alignment with the demands of the Brotherhood, but we're emboldening and encouraging and inviting this increasing aggressiveness on the part of Islamists worldwide.
So you're saying to the president, whose State Department said the war on terror is over,
Among other things.
as you mentioned in the introduction. The course again, just keep saying it because I want to get the number.
Muslim Brotherhood MuslimBrotherhoodinamerica.com.
MuslimBrotherhoodinamerica.com. Even a talk show host can remember that, Frank.
That's the idea.
Yeah, so MuslimBrotherhoodinamerica.com. Now, Frank, you mentioned that we are emboldening them. So there is I remember President Bush talking about how he had to walk a fine line between remorse and mourning and war and aggression to say we're going to get these guys who did this. In response to the events that we've just seen, what statement would you have the president make? If you're writing that statement, what would it include?
I think I would make it clear that we have no interest in a war with Muslims, but we are going to protect ourselves against those who, in the name of Islam, wage war against us. And as President Bush said, he said some important things. Unfortunately, he said a number of foolish things, but one of the most important things was, you are either with us or you are against us. And I would make that our policy. Where we see the Mohammed Morsis very much against us, where we see the Yusuf al-Qaradawis, one of the principal spiritual leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood and of Islamism worldwide, very much against us, where we see the Iranian government very much against us, and myriad others, I would make it clear, you are our enemies until you change course and direction and policy and practice. And as such, we are going to begin holding you accountable, and we are going to begin taking you down. And that's not to be blustered about. That's got to be followed through on. And I think if we start treating our enemies worse than we treat our friends, basic foreign policy 101, we're going to have fewer enemies and more friends. But the course we're on today, Crane, is we're treating our enemies a lot better than our friends. And that only incentivizes people to join the ranks of those who are doing us harm.
Do you link immediately, shoulder to shoulder with Israel, and
Absolutely.
to say that we are in the same war?
We are absolutely in the same war. We're in the same war with anybody who is now confronting this totalitarian ideology. And remember, Ronald Reagan back in 1961 said the following. It's words to live by. He said, freedom is never more than one generation removed from extinction. We don't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. We have to fight for it. We have to protect it. And we have to hand it on to them to do the same. Or we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was like to live in the United States when men were free.
You mentioned Ronald Reagan. I want to jump to the same topic, but really a comparison between Jimmy Carter, the fall of the Shah. Arguably, you can go with Mubarak. You can say the ambassador in Afghanistan was killed, Dubs, if I'm not mistaken. We have an ambassador killed with Chris Stevens. Okay, I'm not trying to line up events, but I am saying there is a general philosophy coming out of both. So if the next president is Mitt Romney, can he go halfway on this, or does he need to go evil empire with that declaration of defining our enemy?
That would have been my message in the Oval Office to these two men. And I think Mitt Romney started, I was happy to say, in his response to these attacks of 9/11 yesterday. The fact that he has been blasted, not just by the president, which is to be expected, but by members of his own party, people who have been involved in his own campaign, people who he showcased, like John McCain, at the convention, is outrageous. Because he absolutely, I think, is inclined and needs to go in the direction of the war, I call it the war for the free world, that Ronald Reagan fought in his time against communism, and do it in much the same way that Reagan did. I had the privilege of serving him in a modest way in the Defense Department for 4.5 years. He put together a strategy, Crane, involving both military capabilities, rebuilding them, economic warfare, which he waged with devastating effect, political warfare, intelligence operations. In other words, a full-fledged, comprehensive strategy for taking the Soviet Union down. We must do nothing less than that with respect to Sharia and the people who are trying to impose it on all of us, by force, if they can, and through stealthy means like the Muslim Brotherhood is using until such time as force is available to them and effective.
They seem to be embracing that kind of strategy. The Muslim Brotherhood seems to be embracing that kind of strategy, comprehensive than we are. And MuslimBrotherhoodInAmerica.com, MuslimBrotherhoodInAmerica.com, the name of the course. Huma Abedin, you heard John McCain even come to her defense, despite evidence, despite just, it wasn't even a controversial statement originally. Here's my question. You have a number of these front groups that have worked in. You expose these. How do you go about dealing with them? Do you immediately call them out right away? Because it seems that these people write their own scripts for our political leaders.
The Muslim Brotherhood and its front organizations are enemy operations to the extent that they are working here in the United States and inside the wire. They must be, I believe, removed in much the way that we actually removed the communists back in the Cold War.
One last question, about 20 seconds left, but we're going to see more of the same unless we come back with a more robust response. You see things devolving more attacks, this movement growing if we don't come back strong?
Count on it.
Frank Gaffney, MuslimBrotherhoodInAmerica.com. MuslimBrotherhoodInAmerica.com. He is the president of the Center for Security Policy, and what a blessing it has been to have him on Values Voters, Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk.
The American Family Association, a ministry with a mission to inform, equip, and activate people like you to strengthen the moral foundations of American culture and give aid to the church here and abroad in its task of fulfilling the Great Commission. We're leading a charge for a restoration of biblical values in America. Thank you for joining the effort. We couldn't do it without your day-to-day support. Together, we are making a difference. The American Family Association. Find us online at afa.net.
It used to be all you could do with a phone was make a call. Today with your smartphone, you can check email, post a comment, listen to the radio, stream a video, pay your bills, share a photo, and expose yourself to the dark side of the internet. Mobile WebGuard is designed for Android and Apple mobile devices to protect you and your family. Mobile WebGuard includes intelligent content scanning, is tamper-resistant, and works with Wi-Fi and cell. Information at mobilewebguard.com/AFA. That's mobilewebguard.com/AFA.
Thank you, Zion Oil and Gas, not only for supporting this ministry, but for your commitment to the State of Israel. Zion's mission is to explore for and find oil and natural gas in Israel. I believe the Lord has made it clear that Israel someday will be politically and economically